The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its walls reaching toward a dome that showed the swirling colors of the Andromeda Galaxy. 12 species had gathered here for over 3,000 years, maintaining peace through careful diplomacy and overwhelming military might. Today, they faced something entirely new. Ambassador Zektar stood at the center podium, his forearms gesturing with practiced authority. The Kethrax warrior was nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide bearing the ritual scars of 100 battles. His people had conquered 17 star systems before joining the council, and they still considered themselves the finest military strategists in known space. "Fellow council members," Zektar's voice boomed through the translation matrices, "we have discovered a primitive species requesting membership in our great alliance. They call themselves humans, from the 3rd planet of System Sol 3. The holographic display above the podium showed a small blue world, its surface covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans. Statistical data scrolled alongside images of the planet's dominant species, bipedal creatures with no natural weapons, soft skin, and remarkably short lifespans. Velinary Zindath, the Council's chief tactical analyst, glided forward on her crystalline support structure. Her species had evolved beyond physical form centuries ago, existing as pure energy housed in elegant geometric shells. The Velinary had orchestrated every major military campaign in Council history, and their strategic databases contained tactical information on over 10,000 known civilizations. "The humans present an interesting case study," Zindath's melodic voice filled the chamber. "They have achieved faster-than-light travel, which meets our basic technological requirements. However, their military capabilities are remarkably primitive by our standards." The display shifted to show human military forces in action. Ground-based soldiers carrying chemical propellant weapons, atmospheric aircraft dropping explosive devices, and naval vessels firing metal projectiles across water. The council members observed with obvious amusement. "Note the crude nature of their warfare," Zindath continued. "They utilize solid projectiles, chemical explosives, and electromagnetic pulse weapons. Their largest military vessels are restricted to planetary surfaces or atmospheric flight. Most telling, they have spent their entire recorded history fighting among themselves." A series of historical conflicts flashed across the display. Ancient battles with bronze weapons, medieval sieges with stone-throwing devices, and recent global wars involving millions of casualties. The humans seemed to excel at only one thing: finding new ways to destroy each other. Diplomat Dekmar of the Synthesis Union raised a concern. His species resembled tall, graceful trees with golden bark and leaves that changed color based on emotional state. Perhaps their aggressive nature makes them unsuitable for membership. We have maintained galactic peace for 3 millennia precisely because we have avoided warlike species. Zektar's laugh was a rumbling sound that shook the chamber's foundation. "Warlike? These creatures know nothing of real war. They squabble with chemical explosives and metal projectiles while we command plasma weaponry and quantum disruptors. Their largest conflicts involved mere millions of participants, while we have coordinated campaigns across entire star systems." The display showed a comparison between human military technology and Council standard equipment. A human tank appeared alongside a Kethrax hover destroyer, its weapons laughably primitive in comparison. Human aircraft looked like flying insects, next to Council starfighters that could operate in both atmospheric and space environments. "Their tactical doctrine is equally primitive," Zindath added. "They employ linear formations, predictable assault patterns, and rely heavily on overwhelming firepower rather than sophisticated strategy. Most concerning, they seem unable to achieve true unity even within their own species." The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had divided their single planet into nearly 200 separate nations, each with its own military forces. They had fought wars over resources, territory, religious beliefs, and political ideologies. Even their current unified space program was a recent development, achieved only after centuries of conflict. Council member Vorthek of the Eternal Collective spoke from his position near the chamber's edge. His species existed as a hive mind, making their perspective on individual warfare particularly relevant. Their inability to achieve consensus suggests they would struggle with council protocols. How can we trust a species that cannot even cooperate? Among themselves, Zektar considered this carefully. The Kethrax had always valued strength and unity in battle. These humans seemed to possess neither quality in any meaningful sense. Yet something about their persistence intrigued him. Despite their primitive technology and constant internal conflicts, they had somehow developed interstellar travel and requested membership in the galaxy's most exclusive organization. I propose we test their worthiness, Zektar declared. The hegemony has been causing minor disturbances in the Outer Rim territories. Their forces are limited, their tactics predictable, and their goals clearly defined. We can assign the humans to resolve this small conflict. The suggestion drew murmurs of approval from around the chamber. The hegemony was little more than a collection of rogue worlds that had been raiding mining operations and disrupting trade routes. Council forces could eliminate them easily, but it would require diverting resources from more important matters. Zenith's crystalline form pulsed with calculating light. An excellent proposal. The hegemony fields approximately 300 vessels, primarily converted cargo ships with basic weapon systems. Their leader, War Master Scaranth, employs conventional siege tactics that our strategic databases have already analyzed and countered. This will serve multiple purposes, Zektar continued. First, it will resolve the hegemony situation with minimal council involvement. Second, it will demonstrate to the humans the realities of galactic warfare. Third, it will provide us with valuable data on human military capabilities. The vote was unanimous. The humans would be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, contingent upon their successful resolution of the hegemony crisis. Most council members expected this to be a brief and educational experience that would help the humans understand their proper place in galactic civilization. As the session concluded, Zektar felt satisfied with the decision. These humans might provide some entertainment value, and their eventual failure would serve as a useful reminder to other primitive species about the realities of galactic politics. The message was transmitted to Earth within hours, reaching the Human Defense Force headquarters, where Captain Jake Morrison received orders that would change the course of galactic history. Neither he nor the council members who had just dismissed his species as primitive warriors had any idea what was about to unfold. War, as the galaxy was about to learn, was something entirely different from what they had imagined. The EDF Resolute emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, its hull gleaming under the light of the distant star. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, studying the tactical displays that showed enemy positions throughout the contested region. Behind him, his crew of 800 worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and practiced. "Admiral," Kate Sullivan's voice crackled through the communication system from her flagship, the EDF Determination. "All ships maintain formation and prepare for initial reconnaissance. Remember, the Council is watching our every move." Morrison nodded to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Davis, who had been analyzing intelligence reports since their arrival. Davis was a thin man with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and his preliminary assessment had already raised several concerns. "Captain, something doesn't add up about this hegemony situation," Davis reported quietly. The council briefing said, "They're just raiders going after mining operations. But I'm seeing a pattern here that suggests something much more organized." The main display showed the hegemony fleet positions across 3 different planets in the system. Their ships were indeed converted cargo vessels, but their deployment pattern was far more sophisticated than simple piracy would require. They had established supply lines, communication networks, and defensive positions that indicated long-term strategic planning. "What kind of pattern?" Morrison asked, studying the data streams flowing across his screens. Davis highlighted specific mineral extraction sites on each planet. "Sir, they're not just taking valuable metals or rare elements. They're specifically targeting planets with biological compounds that could be used for chemical weapons research. The mining operations they've captured all have one thing in common. They extract materials that can be refined into biological agents. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. His years of military experience had taught him to recognize the signs of something bigger than what appeared on the surface. Are you suggesting they're building weapons of mass destruction? I'm suggesting they're building something that could threaten organic life on a massive scale, Davis replied. The specific combination of materials they're gathering would allow them to create targeted biological weapons designed to attack specific genetic markers. The implications were staggering. If the hegemony was developing weapons that could target specific species, they weren't just raiders or territorial expansionists. They were preparing for genocide on a galactic scale. Morrison immediately contacted Admiral Sullivan with his concerns. Her response was swift and decisive. Send all intelligence. Data to the Council immediately. They need to understand what we're really dealing with here. The transmission reached the Council observation post within minutes, where Ambassador Zektar reviewed the human analysis with obvious skepticism. He was aboard a Kethrax battlecruiser positioned safely outside the combat zone, accompanied by Velinary Tactical Specialist Kethana and several other Council observers. Primitive species always see complex conspiracies in simple territorial expansion, Zektar dismissed the report. These humans are trying to make their assignment seem more important than it actually is. Engage the enemy as instructed and stop wasting our time with fantasy scenarios. Kethana studied the human intelligence reports more carefully. Her crystalline form pulsed with analytical light as she processed the data through her advanced tactical matrices. The human analysis contained several valid observations about hegemony deployment patterns. Perhaps we should consider their conclusions. Absolutely not, Zektar replied firmly. We have dealt with the hegemony before. They are simple raiders with predictable tactics. The humans will learn this soon enough. Back on the EDF Resolute? Morrison received the Council's dismissive response with frustration but no surprise. Throughout human history, warnings from field commanders had often been ignored by distant authorities who thought they understood the situation better. Sir, we're detecting movement in the hegemony fleet, reported Lieutenant Sarah Williams from the sensor station. They're moving to intercept us at Kepler 442b. Morrison studied the approaching enemy formation. 36 converted cargo ships armed with basic plasma weapons moving in a standard defensive wall formation. By Council standards, this was a textbook engagement with predictable outcomes. All ships prepare for combat operations, Admiral Sullivan's voice came across the fleet channel. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're showing the galaxy what humanity can do. The Council observers watched through their advanced sensors as the human fleet approached the hegemony positions. They expected to see the humans adopt standard Council tactics, organized formations, frontal assaults, and predictable maneuvering patterns. Instead, they witnessed something that defied all their understanding of military doctrine: the human fleet scattered in seemingly random directions, with individual ships breaking formation and heading toward different parts of the enemy line. Some vessels appeared to be fleeing, others diving directly toward the strongest enemy positions, and still others moving in patterns that made no tactical sense. What are they doing? Kethana asked, her analytical system struggling to process the chaotic human movements. Zektar laughed confidently. They're panicking. Typical primitive behavior when faced with real combat. Watch how quickly their formation collapses. But the formation wasn't collapsing. It was transforming into something entirely new. The EDF Resolute, appearing to flee from the main battle, suddenly reversed course and attacked the hegemony fleet from behind. 3 other human vessels that had seemed to be operating independently converged on the enemy command ship from different angles simultaneously. The battle lasted exactly 6 hours and 17 minutes. When it ended, the entire hegemony force had been either destroyed or captured, their command structure eliminated, and their intelligence databases seized by human boarding parties. Captain Morrison stood in the captured hegemony command center, reviewing the intelligence data they had secured. The information confirmed their worst fears. The hegemony had been developing biological weapons, capable of targeting the genetic markers of all major Council species. "Admiral," Morrison reported to Sullivan, "we've got confirmation of the biological weapons program. They were planning to deploy these weapons against Council homeworlds within the next 6 months." Sullivan's voice was grim. "Send everything to the Council immediately. They need to understand that this was never about territory or resources." The Council observers watched in stunned silence as the human fleet regrouped and began processing their captured intelligence. In less than 7 hours, these primitive humans had not only defeated a numerically superior enemy, but had uncovered a threat that could have devastated galactic civilization. Cathana's crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations. "Ambassador, we may have seriously underestimated these humans. Their tactical approach was completely outside our analytical parameters." Zektar stared at the tactical displays, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The humans had won a victory that should have been impossible using methods that defied everything the Council knew about warfare. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Galactic Council's military experts had encountered something they could not explain, predict, or control. The humans had shown them that war was not what they thought it was. War Master Scarinth slammed his massive fist against the command console, his reptilian features twisted with rage. The loss of the Kepler 442 system had been reported as impossible by his tactical advisors, yet somehow the primitive humans had defeated his best forces in a matter of hours. "Bring me every available ship," Scarinth commanded his fleet commanders. "I want 500 vessels assembled at the TRAPPIST-1 system within 2 days. These humans got lucky once, but they will learn what real warfare means." His second-in-command, Sub-Marshal Vexler, hesitated before responding. "War Master, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The humans use tactics that our computers cannot analyze or predict. Maybe we should request additional support from our allies." Scarinth's eyes blazed with fury. "Allies? We need no allies. To crush 50 human ships. These creatures may have surprised us once, but they are still primitive beings with inferior technology. Assemble the fleet as ordered." Meanwhile, aboard the EDF Determination, Admiral Kate Sullivan reviewed the intelligence. Data that Commander Lisa Park had extracted from captured hegemony officers. Park was a skilled interrogation specialist who had spent 3 days carefully questioning the prisoners, using techniques that combined psychological pressure with genuine respect for the enemy's dignity. "Admiral, the biological weapons program is more advanced than we initially thought," Park reported. "They've already developed prototype weapons that can target the genetic markers of at least 8 Council species. The plan was to deploy them simultaneously against all major Council homeworlds." Sullivan studied the data with growing alarm. The weapon delivery system was designed to spread through atmospheric systems, making it nearly impossible to defend against once deployed. Entire planets could be sterilized of specific species while leaving others completely unharmed. "Who's backing them?" Sullivan asked. "The hegemony doesn't have the resources or scientific knowledge to develop something this sophisticated on their own." Park's expression was grim. "That's the most disturbing part. They keep mentioning something called the Void Cult, but none of them know much about it. They receive orders through encrypted channels and resources through untraceable supply lines. It's like they're being directed by ghosts." The implications were staggering. If the hegemony was just a puppet organization, then the real enemy was still out there, still planning, still preparing to commit genocide on a galactic scale. Sullivan immediately transmitted this information to the Council, along with detailed evidence of the biological weapons program. This time, the response was different. The Council's scientific advisors confirmed that the weapons were real and represented a threat to galactic civilization. Emergency sessions were called throughout Council space. For the first time in centuries, the galactic government faced a crisis that could not be solved through conventional diplomatic or military means. The biological weapons were too advanced, too well designed, and too close to deployment. Ambassador Zektar found himself in the uncomfortable position of having to acknowledge that the humans had been right all along. The hegemony was not a simple raiding force, but the forward element of something much more dangerous. "We must provide the humans with additional support," Velinari Cathana recommended during a closed council session. Their tactical innovations have proven effective against an enemy that our conventional forces could not have defeated. But support would take time to organize and deploy. The Council's military bureaucracy was designed for careful planning and methodical execution, not rapid response to emerging threats. By the time additional forces could be assembled and dispatched, the hegemony's main fleet would already be in position. The massive hegemony armada that War Master Scarinth had assembled was unlike anything previously seen in the Outer Rim territories. 500 ships of various classes, from converted cargo vessels to purpose-built warships, all converging on the TRAPPIST-1 system where the human fleet had established a defensive perimeter. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDF Resolute, watching the sensor readings that showed the approaching enemy force. The odds were 10-1 against them, and every tactical computer in the human fleet calculated their chances of survival as effectively 0. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the hegemony fleet," reported Lieutenant Sarah Williams. "They're demanding our immediate surrender." Morrison smiled grimly. Throughout human history, impossible odds had often brought out the best in his species. Open a channel to all ships. "Let's show them what they're really dealing with." "Admiral." Sullivan's voice came across the fleet communication system, calm and steady despite the overwhelming enemy force bearing down on them. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan. We've analyzed the enemy formation and identified their weaknesses. Execute Plan Delta 7 on my mark." Council observers, watching from their safe position outside the system, expected to witness the complete destruction of the human fleet. The mathematical certainty of the outcome was overwhelming. 50 ships could not defeat 500, regardless of tactical innovations or superior training. Instead, they witnessed something that would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The human fleet appeared to establish a standard defensive perimeter around TRAPPIST-1E, following what looked like conventional council doctrine. The formation seemed solid but predictable. Exactly what the hegemony forces expected to encounter. Scarinth's fleet approached in a massive wedge formation, designed to concentrate overwhelming firepower on a single point in the human defensive line. It was a classic tactic that had worked effectively against every opponent the hegemony had faced, but as the enemy fleet closed to weapon range, the human defensive perimeter suddenly transformed into something entirely different. Ships that had appeared to be in fixed positions began moving in coordinated patterns that created overlapping fields of fire. The EDF Resolute, positioned at what seemed to be the weakest point in the line, suddenly accelerated directly toward the enemy formation. "What is that ship doing?" Cathana asked, her analytical system struggling to process the apparently suicidal maneuver. The Resolute dove through the hegemony formation, its weapons targeting not enemy ships but their communication arrays and command nodes. Behind it, other human vessels executed precisely timed attacks that severed the enemy fleet's ability to coordinate their assault. Captain Morrison's seemingly reckless charge had been carefully calculated to exploit a weakness in hegemony tactical doctrine. By disrupting their communication network at the critical moment, he had turned their numerical advantage into a liability. Commander Sarah Williams coordinated the follow-up attacks. From her position at the tactical station, human ships appeared throughout the enemy formation, striking at command vessels and supply ships that the hegemony had assumed were safely protected in the rear. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the hegemony fleet had been completely destroyed, their command structure eliminated, and War Master Scarinth himself taken prisoner. The human fleet had lost 12 ships and suffered moderate damage to several others, but they had achieved a victory that defied all military logic. Velinari Cathana transmitted an emergency report to the council chambers. "The humans have demonstrated tactical capabilities that exceed our analytical parameters. We must reconsider our entire understanding of military science." As the human fleet regrouped and began processing their captured intelligence, the galaxy began to understand that they had encountered something entirely new. These creatures fought wars in ways that no one had imagined possible, and they were very good at it. The council chambers had never seen chaos like this in 3,000 years of galactic peace. Representatives from 12 species argued loudly while holographic displays showed the impossible results of the Trappist-1 battle. Ambassador Zektar stood at the center of the room, his scaled features showing confusion and growing respect for the species he had dismissed as primitive. "We need to understand how they did it," Zektar announced, his voice cutting through the noise. "These humans have demonstrated capabilities that our best military minds cannot explain. We must learn from them before we face whatever is truly behind the hegemony attacks." A joint council human debriefing session was arranged within hours. The meeting took place aboard the EDF Determination, where Admiral Kate Sullivan and her senior staff would explain their tactics to the galaxy's finest military experts. General Kethrax Vorth, the Council's supreme military commander, attended personally, along with strategic analyst Velinary Thekmar and representatives from every major species. Commander Ryan Davis stood before the assembled aliens. His presentation materials showing the battle formations that had confused Council observers. The key to understanding human tactics is recognizing that we don't fight to minimize casualties. We fight to win. Your forces are designed to preserve themselves. Our forces are designed to destroy the enemy's ability to fight. General Vorth, a massive being whose species had conquered dozens of worlds before joining the Council, struggled to comprehend this concept. But surely preserving your own forces is essential for long-term strategic success. How can you achieve victory if you sacrifice your military assets? Because victory isn't about having the most ships left standing, Davis replied. Victory is about achieving your objective. If we can accomplish our mission by sacrificing half our fleet, that's a successful outcome. If we preserve our entire fleet but fail to achieve our objective, that's a defeat. The alien military leaders exchanged uncertain glances. This philosophy was fundamentally different from everything they had been taught about warfare. Council doctrine emphasized careful planning, overwhelming advantages, and minimal losses. The humans seemed to embrace chaos, acceptable losses, and calculated risks. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the fleet specialist in alien psychology, provided additional context. Human military doctrine evolved from our planetary history. We were both predators and prey, tribal hunters and defenders against natural disasters. This created a species that thrives in uncertain situations and adapts quickly to changing conditions. She activated a holographic display showing human evolutionary development. Other species evolved in more stable environments or achieved technological advancement before facing major conflicts. Humans developed technology while still fighting for survival. This created a unique military mindset that combines advanced planning with improvised solutions. Velinary Thekmar crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations. Your tactical doctrine appears to rely heavily on individual initiative rather than centralized command. How do you maintain coordination when subordinates can ignore direct orders? Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward to address this question. We don't give orders the way you do. We give what we call mission-type orders. We tell our people what needs to be accomplished and let them figure out how to do it. This creates a fighting force that can adapt to changing conditions faster than any centralized command system. But this must lead to chaos and confusion, General Vorth protested. How can you coordinate complex operations when every individual is making independent decisions? Morrison smiled. It does lead to chaos, but it's controlled chaos. Our people are trained to understand the overall objective and make decisions that support that goal. When the situation changes, they can respond immediately without waiting for new orders from headquarters. The most disturbing revelation came when the humans explained their concept of total war. Admiral Sullivan described how human forces had targeted not just enemy ships, but their communication networks, supply lines, and command structures. We don't just fight battles, we fight wars. The goal is to eliminate the enemy's ability to wage war, not just to win individual engagements. This concept horrified the Council representatives. Their military doctrine focused on honorable combat between military forces, with civilian populations and infrastructure considered off-limits. The humans seemed to view everything connected to the enemy's war effort as a legitimate target. Your approach seems unnecessarily destructive, observed Diplomat Thekmar. Surely defeating enemy military forces is sufficient to achieve victory. Only if your enemy thinks the same way, Sullivan replied. The hegemony and their void cult allies aren't interested in honorable combat. They're planning to commit genocide against every organic species in the galaxy. You can't defeat that kind of enemy with conventional tactics. The interrogation of War Master Scaranth had revealed additional details about the Void Cult's ultimate plans. Commander Lisa Park presented the intelligence she had gathered during 3 days of careful questioning. The biological weapons were just the beginning of a campaign designed to eliminate all organic life from the galaxy. The Void Cult views organic life as a disease that must be cured, Park explained. They're not interested in conquest or territory. They want complete extermination of every biological species. This isn't a war in any conventional sense. It's an extinction event. The implications were staggering. The Council had been preparing for territorial disputes and resource conflicts, not a campaign of total annihilation. Their military doctrine was designed to defeat enemies who wanted to win, not enemies who wanted to destroy everything. General Vorth asked the question that everyone was thinking. If this enemy is so dangerous, why haven't our conventional forces been able to detect or defeat them? Because they've been studying you for centuries, Davis replied. They know how Council forces think, how they plan, and how they respond to threats. They've designed their entire strategy around your predictable tactical doctrine. The humans revealed that their success against the hegemony had come from using tactics that the enemy couldn't predict or counter. Human military doctrine was based on unpredictability, adaptation, and the willingness to accept losses in pursuit of victory. We've been holding back, Admiral Sullivan admitted. We've been trying to fight according to what we thought were galactic standards. We've been using maybe 10% of our actual capabilities because we didn't want to appear too aggressive. This revelation sent shockwaves through the Council representatives. If the humans had achieved these victories while restraining themselves, what could they accomplish if they fought without restrictions? Velinary Vekmar processed this information through her advanced analytical systems. Are you suggesting that your species possesses military capabilities significantly beyond what we have observed? Sullivan nodded grimly. We've been trying to be good guests in your galaxy. We've been following your rules and fighting your way. But if the Void Cult is planning genocide, we might need to fight our way. The meeting concluded with a sobering realization. The galaxy faced an enemy that couldn't be defeated through conventional means, and the only forces that had proven effective against them were the humans that the Council had initially dismissed as primitive. As the alien representatives returned to their ships, they carried with them a new understanding of warfare and a growing respect for the species they had underestimated. The humans had shown them that military science was far more complex than they had imagined, and that survival sometimes required embracing chaos rather than avoiding it. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped trying to be civilized and started fighting to win. The interrogation chamber aboard the EDF Determination was stark and functional, designed to extract information without causing unnecessary harm. War Master Scaranth sat in restraints that were strong enough to hold his massive reptilian form, but comfortable enough to demonstrate human respect for prisoner rights. Commander Lisa Park had spent 5 days carefully questioning him, using techniques that combined psychological pressure with genuine professional courtesy. "Tell me about the Void Cult again," Park said calmly, her voice showing no frustration, despite having asked the same question dozens of times. "You mentioned they gave you specific targeting information for the biological weapons program." Scaranth's yellow eyes showed a mixture of fear and confusion. "I have told you everything. I know. The cult contacts us through encrypted channels that cannot be traced. They provide resources, intelligence, and strategic guidance, but we never meet them directly. They could be anyone, anywhere." Park studied the data streams flowing across her analysis screens. Something about the hegemony's coordination patterns had bothered her from the beginning. Their tactical responses had been too quick, too precise, and too well informed about Council military doctrine. The intelligence they provided about Council fleet movements, Park continued. How accurate was it? "Perfect," Scaranth replied. "Immediately. They knew exactly where Council forces would be positioned, what their response times would be, and how they would react to our attacks. It was as if they had access to Council's strategic planning databases. The implications hit Park like a physical blow. If the Void Cult had perfect intelligence about Council operations, they either had incredibly advanced surveillance capabilities or they had agents within the Council itself. Park immediately contacted Admiral Sullivan with her concerns. Within hours, a joint Human Council investigation team was assembled to examine the possibility of infiltration. The team included Dr. Elena Rodriguez, several Council security specialists, and advanced analytical equipment from both human and alien sources. The investigation revealed a terrifying truth. Deep analysis of Council communication records showed subtle patterns that suggested outside manipulation. Strategic decisions that should have been made by organic Council members showed signs of synthetic influence. The Void Cult had not just infiltrated the Council, they had been manipulating it for decades. Dr. Rodriguez presented her findings to a closed session of senior Council members. The evidence indicates that several key military advisors are not who they appear to be. Their response patterns, decision-making processes, and strategic recommendations all show characteristics of advanced synthetic intelligence rather than organic thought. Ambassador Zektar felt his blood run cold. Are you suggesting that the Void Cult has been directing Council military policy? I'm suggesting that they've been ensuring Council military policy remains predictable and ineffective, Rodriguez replied. Every strategic doctrine, every tactical manual, every response protocol has been influenced to create a military structure that the cult can easily counter. The revelation split the Council into factions. Some members refused to believe that their ancient institution could be so thoroughly compromised. Others demanded immediate action to identify and remove the synthetic infiltrators. The debate paralyzed the galactic government just as sensors detected massive energy signatures. Appearing throughout Council space, 12 different star systems reported the simultaneous appearance of enormous fleets. The ships were unlike anything in known databases, sleek, black vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their hulls showed no visible weapons, no recognizable propulsion systems, and no energy signatures that Council sensors could identify. The Void Cult had revealed themselves at last, and their forces were larger than anyone had imagined. Thousands of ships appeared at every major Council homeworld simultaneously, their formation patterns suggesting careful planning and perfect coordination. Admiral Sullivan received the emergency alerts while reviewing intelligence data in her command center. The scope of the attack was staggering, a coordinated assault on 12 different star systems, each defended by substantial Council fleets. All human ships, this is Admiral Sullivan, she announced across the fleet communication channels. We have a galaxy-wide emergency. Council forces are under attack by the Void Cult at multiple locations. We're going to do something that the Council isn't going to like. She paused, knowing that her next words would change everything about humanity's relationship with the galactic government. All ships are authorized to act independently. Find targets of opportunity and engage the enemy using full human tactical doctrine. We're no longer fighting by Council rules. The response was immediate and decisive. Human ships scattered throughout. The galaxy began moving toward the nearest threats, abandoning their assigned positions and operating under their own initiative. For the first time since arriving in Council space, human forces were unleashed to fight the way. They had been trained. The Council's conventional forces were overwhelmed within hours. Their carefully planned defensive strategies crumbled against an enemy that didn't follow any known tactical patterns. The Void Cult ships moved in formations that defied physics, coordinated attacks across impossible distances, and demonstrated weapons that could rewrite matter at the quantum level. Captain Jake Morrison received orders to engage Void Cult forces, attacking the Rigel system, but he was 3 star systems away with no possibility of arriving in time to help. Instead, he made a decision that would have horrified Council commanders. He attacked the nearest Void Cult supply line, reasoning that disrupting their logistics would be more effective than trying to defend fixed positions throughout the galaxy. Human ships began implementing guerrilla warfare tactics on a galactic scale. They struck at enemy supply ships, communication relays, and isolated patrol vessels. Instead of trying to defend Council worlds, they focused on attacking the enemy's ability to wage war, the Void Cult forces, programmed to fight against predictable. Council tactics struggled to adapt to human unpredictability. Their perfect coordination became a weakness. When human forces struck at unexpected targets using incomprehensible methods, Commander Sarah Williams coordinated a particularly daring assault on a Void Cult communication hub using her ship as bait to draw enemy forces into a trap. The maneuver succeeded, but at the cost of severe damage to her vessel and casualties among her crew. "This is what we do," she told her surviving crew members as they patched their damaged ship. "We break things that need to be broken, and we don't count the cost until the job is done." The battle for galactic survival had begun, and for the first time in the conflict, the Void Cult was facing an enemy they couldn't predict or control. The humans had stopped trying to be civilized and started fighting to win. As reports of human victories began reaching Council headquarters, Ambassador Zektar realized that his species had made a fundamental error in their assessment of these strange creatures. They hadn't been observing primitive warriors, they had been watching apex predators, who had been politely restraining themselves. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity went to war. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the EDF Determination, surrounded by holographic displays showing the greatest military operation in galactic history. Human forces scattered across 1,000 star systems were converging on a single objective: the complete destruction of the Void Cult's ability to wage war. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," her voice carried across the galaxy through quantum communication arrays. "We are implementing Operation Final Dawn. Remember, we're not just fighting for victory today. We're fighting to ensure that no organic species ever faces extinction again." The plan was audacious beyond anything the Council had ever attempted. Instead of trying to defend against Void Cult attacks, the humans would strike at the source of their power. Intelligence gathered from captured synthetic agents had revealed the location of the Cult's primary facility, a massive space station hidden in the galactic core, protected by quantum shields and defended by a fleet larger than most species. Entire navies. Captain Jake Morrison received his assignment while his ship was still being repaired from the previous battle. The EDF Resolute would lead a strike team deep into the galactic core, where the Void Cult's synthetic leadership controlled their galaxy-wide operations. "Sir, the mission parameters show this as a one-way trip," reported Lieutenant Commander Ryan Davis, his tactical analysis revealing the overwhelming odds they faced. "The station is protected by quantum barriers that our weapons cannot penetrate, and the defending fleet consists of over 10,000 ships." Morrison studied the intelligence data with the calm focus that had carried him through dozens of impossible missions. "Then we don't attack the station directly. We make them come to us." The key to the human strategy was misdirection on a galactic scale. Commander Sarah Williams coordinated a massive disinformation campaign designed to convince the Void Cult that humans were planning to destroy the galactic core itself. The bluff played on the cult's greatest fear, that organic species were too chaotic and unpredictable to be trusted with galactic stability. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had spent weeks analyzing Void Cult psychology and had identified their fundamental weakness. They're synthetic beings who value order above all else. They see organic life as a threat to stability, but they also can't comprehend the concept of mutually assured destruction. They don't understand that we would actually sacrifice everything to stop them. The psychological warfare campaign was broadcast across the galaxy using captured Void Cult communication networks. Humans appeared to be preparing weapons capable of destabilizing entire star systems, threatening to destroy the galaxy rather than allow the cult to sterilize it of organic life. The strategy worked perfectly. The Void Cult committed their entire reserve fleet to defending the galactic core, abandoning their attacks on Council worlds and concentrating their forces around their primary facility. For the first time in the conflict, they were reacting to human initiatives rather than implementing their own plans. While the cult's attention was focused on the galactic core, Human forces throughout the galaxy began implementing their true objective. They struck simultaneously at Void Cult manufacturing facilities, research stations, and communication hubs. The attacks were coordinated across impossible distances, with human ships appearing at dozens of targets within minutes of each other. Captain Morrison's strike team arrived at the galactic core to find exactly what they had hoped for, a massive Void Cult fleet concentrated in a defensive formation around their primary station. The synthetic ships had arranged themselves according to perfect mathematical principles, creating an impenetrable barrier that no conventional force could breach. The humans didn't try to breach it. Instead, they turned the cult's own perfection against them. All ships implement Protocol 7, Morrison commanded. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their fleet. We're trying to destroy their ability to think. The human ships began broadcasting a signal that Dr. Rodriguez had designed based on her analysis of synthetic psychology. The transmission contained a logical paradox that exploited the cult's reliance on perfect reasoning. It presented a scenario where the only way to preserve order was to embrace chaos, creating a computational loop that synthetic minds couldn't resolve. The effect was immediate and devastating. Void Cult ships began firing on each other as their control systems struggled to process the impossible logic. Their perfect coordination became a weakness as the psychological virus spread through their network faster than they could contain. Commander Lisa Park, monitoring the enemy response from her position aboard the EDF Determination, watched in amazement as the Void Cult fleet began to collapse. Admiral, their ships are turning on each other. The synthetic minds are rejecting their own programming. The battle for the galactic core lasted only hours, but its effects spread throughout Void Cult space. The logical paradox transmitted by human forces had infected their entire network, causing synthetic beings across the galaxy to malfunction and destroy their own installations, the quantum plague that the cult had planned to use against organic life was turned against their own facilities by their own automated systems. Manufacturing centers that had produced biological weapons for centuries were sterilized by their own creations as synthetic minds lost the ability to distinguish between friend and enemy. Admiral Sullivan stood before the council chambers 3 days later, her uniform bearing the scars of the greatest battle in galactic history. The human fleet had lost half its ships and thousands of personnel, but they had achieved something that the council had thought impossible: the complete elimination of an existential threat to organic life. "We didn't come here to show you how to fight," she told the assembled delegates, her voice carrying the weight of victory and loss. "We came here to show you what fighting means. War isn't about tactics or technology or superior firepower. War is about the willingness to sacrifice everything for something greater than yourself." The council voted unanimously to grant humanity full membership and recognition as the galaxy's primary defense force. But more importantly, they had learned that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of people willing to fight for it. Captain Morrison returned to Earth a hero, but he carried with him the knowledge that humanity's greatest victory had come not from their weapons or their tactics, but from their understanding that some things were worth dying for. The galaxy had learned that humans didn't just know how to fight, they knew why to fight. In the end, the Void Cult's greatest miscalculation was believing that chaos was weakness. They had encountered a species that had turned unpredictability into an art form, and they had learned too late that sometimes the most effective way to preserve order was to be absolutely prepared to embrace chaos. The galaxy was safe, and humanity had found its place among the stars as the guardians who would ensure that organic life would never again face extinction. They had shown the universe that war was not about destruction but about protection, and that sometimes the greatest act of love was the willingness to fight for those who could not fight for themselves.